Before we begin, I'd like to explain this grinder, how it's built, and why it's built that way. Like our line of reel grinders, this is an incredibly precise machine. It uses the exact same basic principles and components as the reel grinder. The three principles are durability, precision, and speed. The durability starts with 1/4 inch thick steel welded into one big giant piece. The only sheet metal we have on this grinder is the hood, and it's the 90-degree piece that covers the two grinding heads. That's it. This thing weighs 1,300 pounds, and yes, you heard me correctly, it has two grinding heads and will grind both faces of the bed knife at the exact same time. However, that's not even the most exciting part. The most exciting part is that this machine, because of its durability, allows you to grind both faces of the bed knife parallel to the pivot bolts within 0.02 of an inch. SIP innovated the idea and has been grinding parallel to the pivot bolts since 2010 with our old pin alignment system, and now with the V-Pallet since 2013. That means you can also grind your bed bar parallel to the pivot bolts within 0.02 of an inch, if necessary. At SIP, we use this machine the same way you would check your bed bars on a surface plate. This machine, like our reel grinder, is a surface plate with two grinding heads built in. Each dial has notches on it, and each notch represents 1/1000th of an inch. And your bed knife is held in what we call V support brackets, or essentially machinist V blocks built into your grinder. So this machine allows you to scratch off on one side of your bed knife, set the dial to 0, and then go to the other side of the knife. To the 1,000th of an inch, this machine will tell you how parallel each face is to your pivot bolts. This then allows you to diagnose bent pivot bolts, bad bed knives from the factory, a video for another day, and even diagnose and fix any twisted or out of parallel bed bars you may have. And before you say, bed bars don't twist, Mike, here's a video of a brand new bed bar with only 4 fairways on it before the operator hit an irrigation head and distorted the bed bar. You're going to treat this machine like a jig. It's the known constant that does not move. If it's moving, somebody moved it manually. All we can do with this machine is infeed the stones and move the knife left and right. That's it. Sure, we can do a touch grind with this machine. We even provide you with the shims to do so if you wanted to, but that defeats the entire point of this machine. Touch grinding doesn't solve all of your problems. The only problem it solved was that your knife was dull before, and now it's sharp and shiny. We still don't know if your pivot bolts are straight, your bed bar is flat and parallel to the pivot bolts, if your cut line is parallel to the center line of your reel, if your reel has a cone in it, if your frame is twisted, or if your rollers are parallel to a straight and cylindrical reel. You've stacked bad variable on top of bad variable, and now, because you've done a touch grind, you may or may not cut in the middle of the knife, or you can cut in the middle but not on the ends. It's a frustrating, helpless feeling. Ask me how I know. Where do you even start? The answer is you start in the bed bar. This machine, along with our peerless reel grinder, will help you measure and fix all of these issues in grinder. This durability and precision allows you to pursue a speed that you never knew existed. Once you establish your cut line parallel to the pivot bolts and you apply these same principles with our reel grinder, that cutting unit will cut better and longer than it ever has. And then, when it does come back into the shop, because you've done the work one time up front, you're going to take a fraction of the material and time to get that knife sharp again. We call it the ether. You're touching the cutting unit's sun and not getting burned. And I'll leave you with this from John Patterson. What makes a golf course look good from a cutting unit standpoint? Adjusting the grinder to your bed knife and reel, or adjusting the cutting unit to be geometrically correct and uniform from cutting unit to cutting unit. A few points before we get started, because I know some of you skipped the introduction. And if you skipped the intro, I can't emphasize enough that you need to go back and watch it before you start this video. It explains how we built this machine and why we built it this way. It also explains why the following steps are necessary in order to confirm that you've set up your V-Pallet correctly. Point number 2, this grinder is a very precise measuring device. Like any precision tool, it is calibrated at our factory. We designed and built this machine so that these tolerances should not be moving on you. However, if someone before you manipulated them or something was loosened on accident, this video will show you how to calibrate this precision tool back to our factory specs. And finally, owning a precise machine like this is a powerful feeling. It's going to show you things you never knew existed. For those of you asking for this machine to be perfectly parallel at 0.000, that still wouldn't be considered perfect because there are unlimited decimal places. Precision has no limit. Relative to what we're doing with cutting units in grass, 0.02 of an inch is perfect. If the 2/1000 tolerance still bothers you, I want you to smush a human hair even more and then stretch it out like a piece of bubblegum across the length of your bed knife and tell me if it's still a problem. Or you can grab a pair of calipers and set them to a 2/1000 gap and see how that makes you feel. Everything is going to be okay. Ask me how I know. I've been in your shoes. Okay, before we even go into step number 1, we kindly ask that you clean your machine if you haven't already. It's really hard to indicate a highly precise machine like this, let alone calibrate it if it's filthy. Like our line of reel grinders, you will keep this thing bone dry. Do not spray anything on the chrome bars and do not lubricate them with anything. That's why they're chrome plated, so you do not have to do that. You'll use a shop vac with a soft bristle brush on the interior of the grinder. We know lots of you who do it, so I'll address compressed air. We do not recommend it, but you can wear a mask and lightly blow off things like the V support brackets after you've already vacuumed the grinder out. If you're going to use air, we recommend you stay away from moving parts like your carriage bearings. If you aren't careful, you can pop the seals, which will allow grinding dust and dirt to get in. For the Lexan, you can soak it in Windex or soapy water and then wipe it clean with a fresh microfiber. Do not use the shop vac with soft bristle brush on the Lexan. You will scuff it up and it will turn into a foggy haze. Ask me how I know. The first thing you need to do is confirm that your grinder is level both left to right and front to back. If your machine is uneven in either direction, it can be a result of 1, moving your grinder to a different location in your shop and placing it on uneven ground without leveling it, or 2, from never being properly leveled after it was delivered new. If your grinder is not level, you need to correct that before you start the calibration process. You do that by using a level on the chrome bars in each direction. You start by raising the feet on the front corner legs so that the rubber portion of the foot is not touching the floor. You can then adjust your front to back with the front center foot. You can then adjust your left to right with the rear corner feet on both sides of the grinder. And once the machine is level both left to right and front to back, you can then lower the front corner feet until the rubber portion is just snug with the ground. Make sure you then tighten the jam nuts on all 5 feet. Once your machine is level, you can remove your V-Pallet. And before we dive in, I want to explain what you're measuring and why. The first thing you're going to be doing is checking the carriage. We want to make sure all 6 bearings are riding across the top of the chrome bar uniformly. We also want to make sure that the carriage is traversing flat across the chrome bars. These chrome bars are turn ground polished, hardened 30 thousandths deep, chrome plated, and then straightened within 1/1000th of an inch from end to end. We support them in the grinder with these 2 center supports. What you're measuring for is how flat your carriage is riding across these bars. We're then going to mount the V-Pallet back in the grinder and check it on both faces or both planes as well. Step 1, make sure these 2 bearings on the bottom of the carriage on the leading side are not touching the chrome bar. Also, make sure the 2 bearings on the bottom of the trailing side of the carriage are not touching the chrome bar either. You can loosen the set screws here in order to rotate the bearing axle away from the chrome bar. And just a friendly heads up that the set screw for the trailing side front bottom bearing is behind this pallet clamp. You'll then check the carriage for any rock on top of the chrome bars. If you have any rock, you will loosen these 4 bolts on the leading side of the carriage and these 4 bolts on the trailing side of the carriage. The carriage should naturally rest on all 6 bearings on top of the chrome bar. Tighten the 4 bolts back up on each side and check for rock again. Once you've confirmed that there is no rock, you'll then use a calibration bar. You can purchase one from your local SIP dealer or find a tool steel calibration bar online. Whatever you use, we recommend you confirm that it is flat within 1/1000th of an inch from end to end. We also recommend that you do it on a standard like a surface plate that has also been certified as flat. Our calibration bar is 30 inches long and it doesn't get shipped unless it's flat within 1/1000th of an inch. The calibration bar is, like the Peerless Reel Grinder, how we check the traverse of the carriage across the chrome bars and the center supports. We don't want to see a smile or a frown in the traverse of this carriage. The leading side of the calibration bar will rest on top of the straight bar in the carriage, and the trailing side will have to be shimmed to match the height of the straight bar. You can purchase a motor mount shim kit from McMaster Car. You'll start with a little over ½ an inch of shims, or around 530 to 540 thousandths of an inch to be exact. You can then fine tune from there. You will then mount a mag base with an articulating arm and dial indicator to the air cylinder cover. Do not mount the mag base on the hood because the hood can flex if you lean on it and give you a false reading. Ask me how I know. Mount your dial indicator directly above the center supports of the grinder. You'll then take a dial indicator with a round tip and place it in the center of the calibration bar. You can set your dial to 0 and traverse your carriage from right to left. You always start on the leading side because the straight bar is mounted into the carriage and is not adjustable. You will add or remove shims on the trailing side until you read 0 and 0 on both ends of the calibration bar. You can see here he went too high with the shims, so he will remove 1 or 2 in order to read as close to 0 on both ends of the calibration bar. You can see here that he went too low with the shims and needs to add 1 back. You will do this until you get a straight line from left to right, just like the Peerless Reel Grinder. We want to see a straight line in either an incline or a decline from end to end. We do not want to see a smile or a frown more than 1/1000th of an inch. If you have more than 1/1000th of an inch smile or frown, it means the center support below your front chrome bar is either too high or too low. Before we jump into how you're going to adjust the center support, I want to explain the easiest way to think about what I'm about to show you. An easy way to think about this is to picture what your dial indicator is doing when your carriage bearings are directly above the center support. If your bearing is above the center support, you set the dial to 0, and then you move the carriage and that bearing away from the center support. If your dial goes down in number, then that means your center support is too high. If your dial indicator goes up in number, then that means your center support is too low. And remember, this only applies if you've set your calibration bar up correctly with shims to read 0 and 0 on both sides of the calibration bar. If you have more than 1/1000th of an inch smile or frown, you will need to move the carriage out of the way and put a flat tip on your dial indicator. Remember, flat tip when you're measuring a round surface, round tip when you're measuring a flat surface. You will then put your dial indicator on top of the chrome bar above the front center support. Now, for example, if your dial indicator went up in number by 0.02 of an inch when traversing across the calibration bar, then you will raise your center support by twice that amount. So, in this case, we will raise the center support by 0.04 of an inch. If your dial indicator went down in number by 0.02 of an inch when traversing across the calibration bar, then you will lower your center support by twice that amount. So in this case, we will lower the center support by 0.04 of an inch. You will then move your dial indicator and flat tip above the rear chrome bar and repeat this exact same process. You will raise or lower the rear chrome bar by the exact same amount that you adjusted the front bar with. You will need a 3/4 inch wrench and a small screwdriver. The small screwdriver is for the hole in the threaded rod of the center support. You'll loosen the 3/4 inch jam nut and can rotate the threaded rod to raise or lower the chrome bar. If you lower the threaded rod too far, you will see that the saddle is no longer touching the chrome bar. That's not what we want. We want that saddle making contact with the chrome bar. You will then hold on to the screwdriver and the threaded rod when you tighten the 3/4 inch jam nut back up. Watch your dial as you do this to make sure you don't raise or lower the chrome bar when tightening the jam nut. Once you've tightened the center support back up, you will then put a dial indicator back on top of the calibration bar on top of the carriage and check your traverse once again. We want this carriage traversing left to right within 1/1000th of an inch. Ideally, we want a straight line, an incline or a decline of 1/1000th of an inch. It can have a smile or frown, but no more than 1/1000th of an inch. Once you've indicated and calibrated your carriage into the grinder, you can now get these 4 bottom eccentric bearings to lightly touch the chrome bar as they traverse across the machine. You should be able to stop them from spinning as you move the carriage left and right. If you can't stop them from spinning, then they are too tight on the chrome bar. The next thing we're going to do is mount and calibrate the V-Pallet. When mounting the pallet on this straight bar, slide the pallet back roughly 1 inch from the front of the straight bar here. The V on the left side of the V-Pallet mounts on top of the straight bar in the carriage. The bar in the carriage is case hardened with a nitride coating and is straight within 1/1000th of an inch when mounted into the carriage. The flat, precision ground surface on the right side of the pallet rests on top of a button head bolt. This line and point are the definition of a plane. That's what the V-Pallet mounts on top of. Once we set the V-Pallet on the carriage, you're going to rock it to seat the pallet on the straight bar. You'll take your left hand and put pressure on the top of the left side of the pallet above the straight bar. You'll use your right hand to gently lift the right side of the pallet up, and you're going to rock the pallet up and down to make sure you're capturing the groove of the V-Pallet on the straight bar of the carriage. When you're done, you will gently set the V-Pallet back down on the button head. There's no need to be violent with this process. Once the pallet is captured on the carriage and resting, you can rotate your pallet clamps and you will tighten the clamp on the left side on the straight bar side of the carriage first. You're making sure the V-Pallet stays captured on the straight bar so you can then tighten down the right side of the pallet above the button head. You'll then push the entire carriage assembly to the middle of the grinder, centered above the two chrome bar center supports. You'll then grab your dual dial indicator, or what we call the V-Pallet gauge, and adjust your dials to be centered on the V-support bar. Tighten the soft tip thumb screws so that the dial bracket doesn't move during use. Slide the gauge onto your V-support bar and make sure the gauge is as close to the carriage as you can possibly get it. You'll then rock the gauge the same way you rock the pallet to make sure it's seated correctly on the chrome bars. Set your dials to 0 and you can now move to the right side of the carriage assembly. You probably noticed he's bouncing the dial indicator a bit. He's making sure there's no play in the dial, whether it's the tip or the internals. If you're moving that stem of the dial indicator up and down and the dial itself is moving, check the tip and check the back plate. We've seen lots of back plates loose on dial indicators. It doesn't matter who makes it or how much it costs, they can still move. Again, you'll go to the right side, make sure you slide the gauge as close to the carriage as possible without hitting the pallet clamp here. Rock the gauge on the chrome bars to make sure it's seated correctly. The spec for this process is 0.002 of an inch. Again, some of these machines may be within 0.000. However, that's not our spec at SIP. Our spec is 0.002 of an inch. Relative to what we're doing with grass, 0.002 of an inch is perfect, and that's on greens. If you're grinding a fairway bed knife, you could even get away with 0.005 of an inch, but spec is 2 thou. If this dual dial indicator V-Pallet gauge is reading within 2 thou, leave it alone. If you're out more than 0.002 of an inch, you'll loosen your pallet clamps up and reseat the pallet before checking the dual dial indicator again. If you're still out more than 2 thou, you should remove the pallet and clean the carriage. You can take a green Brillo pad and gently, I can't emphasize that enough, gently clean any surface rust off the straight bar on the left side. You can clean the button head off. You can even make sure it's bottomed out in the mounting plate like it should be from the factory. You can also take that same green Brillo pad to the V in the V-Pallet and to the flat precision ground surface on the other side. Again, do not remove steel. Do not use a red Brillo pad or grinding discs. Only clean the surfaces by hand. If, after all of this, you're still out more than 0.002 of an inch, you can watch the next section to learn how to calibrate the V-Pallet. Ignore this round calibration bar for now. We'll talk more about that in the next section. This section is focused on these adjusters here, what we call the do not touch button. These are calibrated from the factory and should never ever have to be touched. The 6000 Bedknife Grinder with V-Pallet in our demo van is above the rear axle and has over 100,000 miles on it, over potholes and bumps around the country, and it's still within 5/10,000ths of an inch from end to end. That's 0.0005. Your machine is on concrete and should never move out of calibration on its own. If it did move, it's likely because the guy before you used the V-Pallet and these adjusters, or what we call the do not touch button, to do a touch grind instead of using shims in the V-support brackets. In any case, this section will show you how to calibrate what we call the V-support bar. Once you have this V-support bar dialed back into our factory specs of 0.002 of an inch on each face, you should never have to touch these adjusters or shims ever again. These adjust your front face, and this bolt adjusts your top face. The front face uses this bolt for threaded adjustment. The set screw is only there to lock the V-support bar in place. The top face uses shims between the V-support bar and the mounting bracket here. You can get a motor mount shim kit online. You can see the shims in this V-Pallet here. Disclaimer, you do not use this section of the V-support bar for touch grinding. Once this V-support bar is calibrated with shims, you should never ever have to touch these adjusters again. If you wanted to do a touch grind, you will shim between the V-support brackets here. A video for another day. But remember, touch grinding defeats the whole point of this machine. Sure, it was fast and easy, but the only problem it solved was that the knife was dull before and now it's sharp and shiny. You still have no idea where your cut line is in reference to the pivot bolts. Now, if you've run the dual dial indicator a few times, reseated the pallet once or twice, and even cleaned both the carriage and the V-Pallet, but you're still out more than 0.002 of an inch, then you can start messing with these adjusters to dial your V-Pallet back in. Before you loosen anything up, zero out both dials on the left side and then put your dual dial indicator on the right side of the pallet. You will use this as your reference point. If both faces are out of spec, we recommend dialing in the top face first and then the front face second. The first thing you'll do is loosen up the top face bolt. You can use a 7/16 wrench to loosen the top face bolt. Friendly heads up, it's upside down, so your brain will play tricks on you. For the front face, you can then use a 7/16 wrench to loosen up the jam nut on the set screw and back the set screw completely off the back of the V-support bar. We do not want that set screw manipulating the bar in any way. If your front face was in spec of 2/1000ths of an inch, then we recommend you leave this jam nut on the adjusting bolt tight. You don't want to lose that position for your front face. You should be able to move the V-support bar up and down at this point. If your front face is also out of spec, like your top face, then you can loosen up this jam nut with a 7/16 wrench because you'll need to use the adjusting bolt in a few minutes. Now, if your top face is out of spec, you can use shims between the V-support bar and mounting bracket to get you within 2/1000ths of an inch on the top face. You'll add or remove shims as needed. Again, you can get these motor mount shims online. You'll want to watch the dial on the face you are currently adjusting. If you're out 3/1000ths of an inch, you'll adjust only half of your number. For example, if your top face dial indicator is reading 10/1000ths of an inch high on the right side, then we are going to remove 5/1000ths worth of shims from between the V-support bar and its mounting bracket here. If the top face dial indicator is reading 20/1000ths low, then we will add a 10/1000 shim between the V-support bar and its mounting bracket here. These numbers won't be final as you'll have to continue to fine tune, but this is just a good starting point. Each time you add or remove a shim, you need to tighten down the top face bolt and take your dual dial indicator back over to the left side of the pallet, set your top face dial indicator to 0, you can ignore the front face dial for now, and go back over to the right side and check your top face again. You'll do this each time you add or remove a shim until you're back within our factory spec of 2/1000ths of an inch. Once you're within spec on the top face, you can then loosen the top face bolt back up and now dial in your front face if needed. You can now use the adjusting bolt to move the V-support bar forward and backward. Again, if you're out 3/1000ths of an inch, you'll adjust only half of your number. In this case, we're going to 0.0015 or 1.5 of an inch on the front face. Again, when you adjust one side, the other side has moved the opposite direction. So you're going to snug the jam nut up on the adjusting bolt, not too tight, we're just keeping the adjuster captured, and do not tighten the set screw or its jam nut yet. We haven't even tightened the top face back down yet either. We were within spec there, so we're not worried about that at the moment. We're going to re-zero our dual dial indicator on the left side again and recheck on the right side to see if we've made any progress. We like to confirm that we're within spec on the face we are adjusting before we tighten everything else back down. In this scenario, we know we're within spec on the front face now, so we can now tighten the top face bolt back down. We advise that you watch both dial indicators as you do this. After tightening the top face bolt back down, we recommend you re-zero your dials on the left side and check the right side once again to make sure nothing moved on you when tightening the top face bolt down. If you're still within spec, we now recommend bringing the set screw up to the back of the V-support bar and just barely make contact with it. Then, tighten the jam nut down. You'll want to hold the set screw with an Allen wrench as you do this. You do not want this set screw distorting the V-support bar. Again, it's just reinforcement, not an adjuster. You can then end by tightening the jam nut on the adjusting bolt, watching the dual dial indicators as you go through this entire final tightening sequence. Finally, always end with the dual dial indicator as confirmation that you're within spec of 2/1000ths of an inch on both faces. In this section, we're going to be covering the most important measurement in this entire machine. This measurement tells you exactly what this machine is going to do to your bed knife. This is a round calibration bar. It's turn ground polished, hardened, and chrome plated. You can get them online. If you do, make sure to confirm its straightness on a surface plate with V-blocks before using it, or else you'll be chasing your tail and changing things on this grinder when you don't need to. All because the tool you're using is incorrect and out of spec. Usually they are within 1/1000th of an inch from end to end. They're usually around 36 inches long. And if you don't have them already, you'll want to get yourself a back plunger dial indicator, a surface gauge to mount the indicator to, and some V-blocks to hold the calibration bar. When you check the calibration bar in V-blocks, you should find the high spot of the bar on one side, set your dial to 0, and then check across the entire length of the bar in multiple spots, especially in the middle, and finish on the other end. If it's showing a smile or frown, that's fine as long as you know where the smile or frown are. However, we highly recommend that you use a bar that you know is straight within 1 to 2 thousandths of an inch, and you can and should also set your dial to 0, keep it still in one spot, and then spin your calibration bar in the V-blocks, checking for any runout. You'll want to do this in a few spots along the bar as well. Some customers have even mentioned that they confirmed that a brand new roller shaft that was sitting on their shelf was straight within 2 thousandths of an inch, and they used that instead of a calibration bar. That's fine as long as you have confirmed its straightness. And just a friendly heads up that once you install this calibration bar into your V-support brackets, do not tighten these black set screws with detent balls down on the bar. First thing you want to do is mount the bar into your V-support brackets, mount up a dial indicator on a mag base, and mount it to the grinder. Again, do not mount the mag base on the hood because the hood can flex if you lean on it and it will give you a false reading. Make sure you have a flat tip on your dial indicator for this process because remember, flat tip when you're measuring a round surface and round tip when you're measuring a flat surface. Mount your dial indicator onto the chrome calibration bar directly above the center supports of the grinder and begin on one side. Zero out your dial indicator and traverse your carriage from side to side. Same as the Peerless Reel Grinder, spec for this process is also 2 thou. We want to see an incline or decline of 2 thousandths of an inch or less. A smile or frown are not ideal, but they're okay at 2 thou. At this point, however, we should be seeing a straight line because we removed that smile or frown when we adjusted the center supports earlier in this video. We prefer a straight incline or decline. If we see an incline or decline of more than 2 thousandths of an inch, we can remove these brackets and clean them, along with the V support bar with a green Brillo pad to knock down any grinding dust that has become trapped. Again, do not use a red Brillo pad or grinding wheels. We do not want to remove material. This V-Pallet is the most expensive piece on this grinder because of the labor it takes to achieve these precision ground surfaces. Put it all back together and check again. You can even swap the brackets from one side to the other to see if it makes a difference. Unless you have these first generation V-support brackets. These cannot be swapped from side to side. To make sure they're on the correct side of the V-support bar, you will make sure this half moon cutout is facing to the outside of the V-support bar and the tapered bolts are facing to the inside of the V-support bar. These steps should get you within spec. If you're still out of spec, make sure you're mounting the support brackets flush with the V-support bar, and then you can and should double and triple check that your calibration bar is straight within 1/1000th of an inch. You will then rotate the dial indicator to the back of the round calibration bar, which will measure what your front face is doing. The same principles apply. If you're getting readings outside of spec, make sure the brackets are mounted flush to the V support bar, clean everything. You can even swap brackets from one side to the other, and then you can and should double and triple check that your round calibration bar is straight within 1/1000th of an inch. One final reminder, spec for this process is 2 thousandths of an inch and we want a steady incline or decline from left to right. We do not want a smile or frown. If you're still getting a smile or frown at this point, you need to go back to step 1 and check your chrome bars with the center supports below them. One final point, now that you've calibrated your chrome bars, the V-Pallet, and your V-support brackets, you can, as our customers like to say, trust the grinder. You've just confirmed that this machine is flat, straight, and parallel within 2 thousandths of an inch. Again, a human hair is 3 thousandths of an inch thick. If this machine now says your bed knife is out of parallel to the pivot bolts by 27 thousandths of an inch, trust the grinder, even if the knife and bed bar are brand new. If this machine says your brand new bed bar has a 38 thou twist in it, trust the grinder. And one last time, these things that you just measured should not be moving on their own. If they are moving, we have other issues going on and we need to pinpoint what's moving and why. But once you've confirmed that this thing is flat, straight, and parallel within 2 thou, trust the grinder.